Jeff found a remote, a strange remote with a single dial and a glowing button. He didn't know where it came from, didn't remember buying it. He picked it up, turned it over in his hands. It felt warm, almost alive. He noticed the dial had markings, years going down instead of up. Curiosity piqued, Jeff pointed the remote at himself, a mischievous grin spreading across his face. He pressed the button. A jolt, a tingling sensation, and then nothing. Jeff laughed, feeling foolish, of course. Magic remotes? What was he thinking? He tossed the remote onto the coffee table and went about his day, the strange device already fading from his thoughts. Later that day, Jeff caught his reflection in the mirror. A younger man stared back at him, younger but familiar. "It can't be," he breathed, picking up the remote once more. He cautiously turned the dial, watching in disbelief as the years seemed to melt away. His reflection was no longer a reflection, but a memory come alive. A 2-year-old Jeff, eyes wide with wonder, grinned back. The possibilities hit him all at once. He aged himself back into an adult and did some shopping first. He set up everything beforehand. He could be young again, relive his childhood, experience the world with fresh eyes. But this time, he'd have the knowledge and experience of an adult. What would it be like to see the world through the eyes of a child, knowing all that he knew now? The dial seemed to pulse with an enticing energy. Jeff's gaze fell upon an inflatable kiddie pool just outside the backyard door. He had filled it with water, and it looked so inviting. A wave of nostalgia washed over him, the simple joy of splashing in the water, the feeling of the sun on his bare skin. A mischievous grin spread across his youthful face. With a deep breath and a mix of trepidation and excitement, Jeff turned the dial to 2 years old and pressed the button. The world expanded, colors became vibrant, textures intensified. He was a toddler again, clothes suddenly constricting, unnecessary. He ripped them off with glee, tossing them aside, letting other clothing drop away. The air felt cool against his skin. He toddled towards the pool, his bare feet slapping against the hardwood floor. He reached the pool, his tiny hands gripping the inflated sides. He plunged in, the plastic cool against his skin. The water splashed, a symphony of sound and sensation. He giggled, kicking his legs, sending droplets flying through the air. He explored his transformed world with the unbridled enthusiasm of a child. He crawled, he climbed, he tasted, he touched. Everything was new, exciting, a sensory playground waiting to be explored. But the pool, as much fun as it was, wasn't enough. He wanted to go further, deeper into the experience of childhood. He wanted to see the world through the eyes of a baby, to feel the complete dependence, the raw, unfiltered emotions. He crawled out of the pool, leaving a trail of wet footprints on the deck as he re-entered the house. He failed to notice that someone was watching him just over the fence line. He picked up the remote, his small fingers struggling with its size. He pointed it at himself, his reflection a blurry, undefined image in the shiny surface. With a determined frown, he turned the dial all the way down, past toddlerhood and just before newborn, until it rested on 6 months old. He hesitated for a moment, a flicker of doubt crossing his mind, but the curiosity, the desire to experience life anew was too strong to resist. He pressed the button. Section 5. A whole new perspective. The world towers above baby Jeff. The world exploded in a cacophony of light and sound. He was lying on his back, his vision blurry, his limbs uncoordinated. He tried to sit up, but his body refused to cooperate. He could only lay there, his head lolling to the side, taking in the world from this strange new perspective. Everything seemed enormous. The coffee table loomed over him like a giant monolith. The ceiling stretched endlessly above him, a vast expanse of white. His own hand, chubby and small, fascinated him. He watched as it moved in front of his face, fingers curling and uncurling. Section 6. Familiar faces, fading memories. Jeff struggles to recall his life before. How long he laid there was a mystery to him. Thinking was becoming a blissful experience. He became aware of a presence looming over him. A face, familiar yet distant, swam into view. It smiled down at him, cooing sounds he couldn't understand. He recognized his elderly neighbor, Miss Lily Henderson, the one who always offered him cookies. But the recognition was fleeting, like a half-remembered dream. He tried to speak, to form words, to tell her who he was, but only gurgles and sputters escaped his lips. Frustration welled up inside him. He was trapped inside his infant body, his adult mind a distant echo. The remote was just a foot away, but his limbs were too weak and hard to control at the moment. Section 7. Lost in sensation. The world bombards baby Jeff with sights and sounds. The world was a kaleidoscope of colours and sounds, overwhelming in its intensity. He felt the rough texture of the carpet against his cheek, tasted the salty tang of his own tears. His senses, heightened and raw, bombarded him with information. Lily picked up the remote, turning its dial, then using it on herself. Now a young Lily stood over him, and she picked up him to rock in her arms. He felt a wave of exhaustion wash over him. His eyelids felt heavy, his limbs leaden. Lily telling him she saw him change from her view over the fence. He drifted off to sleep, the world fading to a soft blur of light and sound. Section 8. Reflections of a Shapeshifter. Jeff ponders the nature of self across ages. As he drifted in and out of sleep, fragmented memories of his adult life flickered through his mind. He remembered his job, his few friends, his house. But these memories felt distant, unreal, like scenes from a movie he'd once seen. He wondered if this was what it was like to be a baby, to experience the world with such fresh, unfiltered senses. Or was this just a simulation, a pale imitation of the real thing? Was he still Jeff, the man who could change his age at will with a high-tech remote? Or was he becoming something else, something new and unknown? Section 9. The Gift of Innocence. Jeff emerges with newfound appreciation for life. He woke up slowly, his mind gradually piecing itself back together. He was back in his own body, his adult form, back on his own bed. The remote was there on the bedside table, and he was naked under the covers. Lily must have restored him back to normal. Letting him sleep, well, like a baby. He sat up, feeling the familiar weight of his limbs, the ease of movement. He looked around the room, through the open doorway, at the scattered toys, the discarded clothes. The world seemed different now somehow. The colors seemed brighter, the air cleaner. He felt a sense of gratitude, of awe, at the simple fact of being alive. He picked up the remote, turning it over in his hands. He knew he could use it again to become young, to relive his childhood. He'd have to talk to Lily and thank her for the help she provided, maybe even hire her as his babysitter. But for now, he was content to be himself, to experience the world with the wisdom and knowledge he had accumulated over a lifetime. He had glimpsed the world through the eyes of a child, and it had changed him in ways he was only beginning to understand.